was sort of his topic was meat-eating horses. His
Oh,
whole
Lord.
thing was that he made the argument that horses eat meat. And it was kind of one of those, like, it sounds so ridiculous on the face of it. But as I said to him, like, during the interview, I'm like, I have no investment in, I have no investment in like whether or not horses eat meat. So I'm all ears, dude. Like, make the case. And he kind of did it. And I was like, oh, all right. Yeah.
Acadia After Dark is a horror podcast, and as such, may not be appropriate for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Good evening, hikers, and welcome back to the Acadia After Dark podcast. As always, I am your host, the Reverend Redbeard, and I am so happy to have you join me this evening. Got a great episode lined up for us this week. I had a friend of the show reach out to me, Tim Binnall, host of Binnall of America and news editor for Coast to Coast AM. I was on his show a few months ago, and he was gracious enough to return the favor now, and I could not miss the opportunity to interview him because he is an absolute gem of a person and a wealth of information. He has a ton of stories to share. I think y'all will enjoy it. As always, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and if you want more of the show, head on over to acadiaafterdark.com. Without further ado, let's get to it.
There you go. I jumped the gun a little bit. Sorry about that. Thanks for having me,
No
Christian.
worries,
It's
bud.
my pleasure, man. It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to chatting with you. And yeah, had you on Binnall of America back at the start of the year, and always a good, that's one of the benefits, I think, about having a show like this. It doesn't happen with every guest, let's be honest. I mean, I've interviewed hundreds of people, but it's like some of the guests, you kind of hit it off and you keep talking after the show and you kind of keep the messages going. And you're one of the folks who that's happened with, you being up in Maine, me being in Massachusetts, a couple of New Englanders. I was going to say, I always kind of feel like, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm biased from where I am in Massachusetts. I always feel like Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine are kind of our own little subsection of New England. Like there's a certain kinship between those three states that I've always found. Like Rhode Island is kind of off doing its own thing, and Vermont and Connecticut are same kind of way. But it's like Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire. There's kind of like a trilogy there that there's a sort of a connection. And so, I always like sort of connecting and meeting and becoming friends with people in that trifecta of states. Here in
Absolutely. No, it definitely. I think that's where I kind of agree with you. It feels like that's where true New England is. I'm probably going to get hate for that, but yeah, I feel like that's where true New England is. And we've got, we were a part of Massachusetts up until the 1800s. So there's that, there's a bit of, there's blood history there for better or worse sometimes. Cause every time I see you people up in my neck of the woods, you guys got to learn to drive when you hit our roads. But nah, honestly, this year it's been so slow. We'd just be glad to have the tourism at this point because, man, it has been quiet around these parts. I am surprised. I did not expect it to be this way this year, but they slowed down the cruise ships this year, which was an ongoing battle that they've been having the last couple of years in the local legislature. And that kind of came in and then coalesced with a drop in tourism from Canada that has now resulted in us having a pretty dry year so far. And so glad to see people like you coming up here to visit once in a while.
I do when I can. I do really love, like I said, I love Maine, I love New Hampshire, and obviously Massachusetts here where I am. So it's I try to do a lot of road trips in that general area when I can.
Yeah, for sure. We're talking about trying to get down there this year, probably September, October. I know that's an awful time of year to probably come down there because my fiance has never been to Salem. We really want to go down and check out the stuff around there. I know a few people in the area, so I was like, might as well do it, right?
Yeah.
It's been one of those years where like we got to get out and do stuff because it's just time's burning. Might as well do something with it.
I feel that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's constant onward march of time, as they say. Yeah, but I'm so glad to have you on the show. I think we're gonna have a great conversation today. One thing, starting right off here, because kind of introduce you. I know most people, hopefully, people have heard your show, either the episode that I was on, and then followed off of that, which feels like forever now, because that was basically when I first started out podcasting, essentially at the beginning of the year or late last year when you reached out to me. So as I said, you're a news editor for Coast to Coast AM, which is an incredible accolade. Like one of the most prolific paranormal radio shows of all time. And you've come across tons of stories there, I'm sure. Plus, you host your own podcast of 20 years now, Binnall of America. So, first off, because there's just a ton to dive into there, what got you into the paranormal?
I think if I was to, I mean, really, I was kind of like a child of the 80s. So, like the child, like the late 80s. I was born in 79. So, I would have to point the finger at Unsolved Mysteries. Like, that had to be what got me going as a kid in this stuff. And I remember, like, being really into it and doing like my mom helped me, as all moms do when you're in like elementary school, right? Like I did like a book report or whatever, a science thing. It was like on Bigfoot. I wish I had the picture, but it was like I was just like a little fourth grader or whatever, and my mom made like a real like life-size Bigfoot, and we had it in the classroom, and it was like we taped it to the wall and everything. So I vividly remember that. Like I said, I wish I had a picture of that. That's little Binnall. Awesome. Next to the Bigfoot.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So I was really into it as a kid. High school, college, fell out of it, was mixed up in college things. And got out of school. Yeah, exactly. Got out of school. Tell the story a lot when I do these shows. But so I got out of school. My late father, God rest his soul, he sat me down like the first day I got back from college. And he's like, handed me a slip of paper. And he's like, this is how much you owe. And then he handed me the want ads back when they had the want ads, like in the newspaper. He's like, now go get a job and pay back this money, pay back these loans and everything. So I got a job as an overnight janitor at my old high school. And it was there. After a couple of years, somebody recommended, because they knew I was kind of into the paranormal. I was getting a little back into it. 9/11 had just happened. So it's kind of like, oh, what's this all about? This seems kind of weird. Yeah. Somebody was like, you should listen to Art Bell. And I'm like, what the hell is Art Bell? And they're like, it's an overnight radio show that does just as paranormal. So this was like late 2002. And so I started listening to Coast last year, like the last few months of Art. And then George took over in January 2003. I listened to the show like religiously every night at work. So it was like it really was like a, well, I mean, obviously it was a precursor to podcast. This was like 2003. This is like the equivalent of somebody who works and listens to podcasts all day. That back then, that was like unheard of. So you only got the 4 hours of paranormal radio. That's all you got essentially. And maybe mix in a little Jeff Rentz before he went super crazy. And so I listened to a ton of Coast to Coast. Sort of did, like, I guess you could say I did my sort of paranormal undergraduate in those 4 years or so that I was working overnights. And then I was like, boy, I really like to interview some of these people. I like to talk to them more, and started getting more into it and reading the books and everything. And then I was a subscriber to a pro wrestling site that had like daily news updates, and they were in MP3 form. So you would just download the MP3 and you'd put it on your iPod.
Yeah, back on like AOL, they used to have a lot of those and stuff.
Yeah. So it was like, well, why don't I record these phone calls? Why don't I interview people? I can just record the phone call and then figure out how to turn that into a computer file. This is how like neophyte I am with this stuff. So like I'll turn it into an MP3, and then people can just download it off of the website. So that was how I did it. It was like right when it was like the birth of, I was there on the ground floor of the podcasting thing. This was like nothing. The word didn't even, I don't even know where the word came from, but it was before podcasting started. So the show, if you like go back, and even now sometimes it's called Binnall America Audio, because it was like, there was no such thing as a podcast. It was just like, this is the audio component of Binnall of America. And this is, so that was kind of it with the podcast. Started that in 2005. And then a couple years later, the folks at Coast to Coast knew I was a huge fan and they needed someone to do fill-in work for them. And then that kind of led to me becoming the news editor. And I've been doing that since late 2015. So I'll be hitting my 10-year mark this November on that. So that's pretty, it's pretty crazy. I tried to keep these two worlds separate, even though they're both of the same genre. But like now, as I've gotten deeper into this job, it's like, look, I've had two careers here in this. I've been the podcaster, and now I've been doing this for 10 years. Like I have this amazing cachet of stories and knowledge from what I cover. It's like, oh, wow, I'm kind of surprised myself sometimes, just because, you got to know a little bit about everything if you're going to be covering everything in the paranormal. So you got to know, you got to know you got to be familiar with like everything pretty much. So it's a challenge, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And it's cool how it kind of came full circle because, you started out in listening to Coast AM for all those years and then come back to it. And now you're on it. And not only that, but you've been working with them for 10 years now. That's an incredible, like, just what a cool story to have that just work out that way. It's like fulfilling the dream in a way. I'm sure you probably never thought, oh, I'm going to have a career in doing this when you were probably younger and reading about this and like buying books at the library, at the local bookstore or whatever. I used to absorb them at Mr. Paperback. I'd buy every one I saw on aliens or UFOs or, Bigfoot, ghosts, etc. Every single one I came across, I filled a friggin' bookshelf with things by the time I was in like, my early 20s. It's cool to see how that, came right around for you. And now here it is, you've mingled with almost everybody I can think of note in the paranormal world or the, anything remotely, because it's not even just paranormal with your show. You cover a lot of topics. Pretty much anybody has got something to say that's outside of the mainstream is fair game for you. How'd you design your podcast format? Because it rings of like how Coast to Coast is, but you bring your own flavor to it.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like inspired by Coast to Coast when it, because that's what I listened to, and he's kind of a pariah because he's lost his fucking mind. But Jeff Rance, like, there was a certain format back in the day. There were other guys. I can't. Michael Corbin's another guy that's kind of forgotten, but it was just like a guy talking to a guest, and it was just this long form interviews. That's kind of all I ever wanted to do. Was just these long form interviews. And now looking back on it, I was joking with a guest, it'll be up on a few weeks on Binnall of America, but it's like looking back on it, it's like I see all these shows and it's like, it's like the name is Binnall of America. It's stuck now after all these years, but it's like, what a dumb fucking name. Like like you and I will be like, nobody gets it. They don't really understand it. It's like, but it's my journey. It's my exploration of this stuff. And it's kind of leaves the door open where it's like, well, it's Binnall's show. It's Binnall of America. I can interview anyone I want. And I'm not pigeonholed necessarily to be, a UFO show or a Bigfoot show or any other sort of topic or a true crime show. It's like, I can do all that stuff because it's Binnall of America. It's just whatever interests me, whoever I feel like talking to. So it gives me the leeway. But at the same time, it's kind of like, I kind of kick myself because you see all these other shows that have really good names that like you understand immediately they're like a paranormal podcast. If someone just hears Binnall of America, they're like, what even is that? So it's like, it's kind of, but I mean, the show's been around forever, and to me, it's like, look, it's an acquired taste. It's kind of like, I don't promote it really ever. I don't have any social media sort of like, I post it out on the day it goes out, maybe retweet it a couple days later. but it's like I don't really hammer promoting the show very hard at all, because to me it's like this is the show for those in the know. Like, if you know about Binnall of America, that's, I much prefer to sort of just be that way than to have to go on Instagram and post a reel on Facebook and do this, that, and the other thing. It's like, no. This is the show for those in the know. And if you, and a lot of people, I'll hear from people that be like, holy shit, I just found your show and I can't believe what, like, I'm going to be spending the next 2 months here listening to this show. And it's like, yeah, we've got like 500 episodes going back 20 years. And like, these are real, like, I mean, I remember when I got into Coast to Coast, I signed up for their subscription service, and I kind of did the same thing that I think people do with my show, which was like, I got into it and I was like, I signed up and I like feverishly went into the archives, and I'm like pulling out all the Jim Morris episodes and the Stan Friedmans and the Lauren Colemans. And I'm like, I want to hear these shows with these guys. And it's like, that's what Binnall America is. You go on there now, you can pull up 10 or 11 Stan Friedman interviews and 10 or 11, more than that, like 15 Friedman interviews, like 10 or 11 Jim Mars interviews, like, probably close to a dozen interviews with Lauren Coleman and all these like legends and titans of the field that I was fortunate enough to get to speak to over the years, especially in the early years.
Absolutely. It's incredible too, because like, I mean, when you reached out to me, I pretty much immediately found myself doing exactly the same thing, just diving back into the backlog and of episodes after episodes after episodes. And I don't even know how far I got back. It was only a couple of years of worth of listening. And then I started just catching up on the week to week. Yeah. And, some of the episodes you have can be somebody like Lauren Coleman, from my neck of the woods, basically one of the godfathers of cryptozoology. I'd say he's on the Mount Rushmore, certainly, of anything paranormal or slightly in that direction of research. And, hearing the episodes you had with him was a highlight of like listening to your work and everything like that. Now after years, you've been able to develop a friendship with him and everything. And, it comes across in the way you interact with your guests. I had a great time being on your show and my time on there as well. You're a very good host for a multitude of reasons.
Oh, thanks.
You have a very engaging style, makes it easy to talk to, but also you do your research. You hear a lot of podcasters, you hear a lot of people that do this sort of work, even in radio. Half the time you're like, did you know who you were asking on the show this week? Or are you just kind of being led through the whole thing? And I don't get that when I hear you, even when I was on the show, like you knew what I had been working on. You knew a lot of the stories already. You had heard some of them yourself beforehand, and was able to point me the Palmyra Wolves. You were able to point me to the Linda Gottfried book, which I had not even found until after you had mentioned that somebody had commented on your video or your podcast of it. And I was like, wow, opened up a whole new thing in my, research. And it's so cool how you're an inflection point in paranormal right now. Cause I can listen to your show and I'll hear people I've never heard of before, but then I can hear people, like I said, like you said, Freeman or, Coleman. And it's wild to me because you have 20 years in this, so many episodes. I'm always finding something new with them.
Yeah.
Who were some of yours? Because you just had your 20-year anniversary, fantastic 6-hour episode, which I binged during a work day.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. I was eating good that week, man. You've had so many good guests on there. Who are some of your like favorites that you've been able to get on
there? Well, setting aside the triumvirate of Stan and Jim and Lauren, who were kind of like the giants upon whose shoulders I stand.
Sure.
I mean, it's funny. I think the one I really want to mention, I do mention every time this question kind of comes up, is like Kendall Carver. He's completely outside of the world of paranormal. I think it was the most important episode we ever did. Kendall's daughter, the late Kendall Carver, he passed away about 5 years ago. he was the director of the International Cruise Victims, and his daughter vanished on a cruise. And it became his life's crusade to raise awareness of the dangers of cruise ships and also to tell his daughter's story and also be an advocate for other families who have experienced this. He testified before Congress. A great man. And I liked him a lot. I'm kind of getting choked up thinking about it because I would love to still have him on the show because he was just a tireless advocate for these folks and what they have gone through because he went through it himself. And and I just thought that was so important. Like I don't know if I would ever go on a cruise ship again. He sort of disabused myself and the listeners of sort of the notion that you see in the commercials that these are like, oh, it's a fun-filled week-long party, and it's like, no, these ships are registered in third world countries, so the laws don't apply. The American laws don't apply. So if something happens to you, very often young women, if they get sexually assaulted by crew members or something, like what they do is essentially they're like, we're going to drop you off at the next port of call and you can file a police report with someone in the Dominican Republic against this, and it's like, it becomes a huge thing. They don't have the proper medical care on these ships. Someone had like a medical emergency. He was telling me, I remember and the same thing happened. They're like, well, we're coming into Puerto Rico tomorrow. They wheeled this person off the ramp and to an ambulance. And it was just like, they had they were kind of waiting around for help for a couple days. It was really bad. And there's no police. There's nothing. There's no a law enforcement on the cruise ship. It's sort of all run by the cruise company and everything. And they're sort of it's more like public relations. And if something happens, that someone from the company will talk to you, but their job is to get you to sign something so you don't make any trouble for the cruise company. They're not there to investigate what happened and everything. And there's no, he said something like some insane percentage. I just watched a Netflix documentary on this cruise ship.
The poop cruise.
The poop cruise. Yeah. And it really rung a lot of bells from my conversations with Kendall because it was let's say there's 10,000 people on the ship, a third of that is the crew, and they're not vetted. There's no it's not like when you go to volunteer at a school or teach or any of these jobs here where they do a Corey and they do a background. None of that. They just hire these people just off the streets from all over the world. And it's like, look, dude, if you're in some other country and you want to, get the hell out of town because you need to, you can go work on a cruise ship and just live the life at sea. So yeah, Kendall Carver was, I really, really, that one really kind of just really stuck with me because it was like, wow, here's something, and I kind of got into it just in a titillated sort of way. Ooh, what are these creepy cruise ship mysteries? But talking to him really drove home, these are real people who have had terrible traumatic experiences, and the cruise ship industry is incredibly corrupt. And it's so it was like, wow, there's a lot more of this than stuff you see on Discovery ID. This is these are real people who have had terrible experiences. Now, other guests, I'll just give you another couple of fun ones. Is the one I always get mentioned a lot is Colin O'Reilly. He was sort of his topic was meat-eating horses. His whole thing was that he made the argument that horses eat meat. And it was kind of one of those, it sounds so ridiculous on the face of it. But as I said to him, during the interview, I'm I have no investment in, I have no investment in whether or not horses eat meat. So I'm all ears, dude. Make the case. And he kind of did. And I was like, oh, all right. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, all right. I guess horses can eat meat, dude. I didn't really, think about it. And I'll just give one more recent one because I'm a big appreciator of sort of the trailblazers and the pioneers and everything. And I recently had Larry Arnold on, who is the preeminent spontaneous human combustion guest. And even when I set up to talk to him again, it wasn't until we kind of sat down to talk for the show that it kind of struck me that Larry is the guy. He's like the Lauren Coleman of spontaneous human combustion. Like, he's been doing this for 30 something. I think he said he's been doing like 50 years since like the 70s. And he's done, if you go back and you look at the shows like Sally, Jesse, Raphael, and that kind of like the 80s talk shows, if any show that's ever done spontaneous human combustion, Larry Arnold is the guest because he's the only guy. And it's like, what a weirdly unsung hero in a sense. Like, when Larry Arnold's gone, I don't know, like, when Larry Arnold goes, spontaneous human combustion goes with it, because I don't know anyone else who is even researching this or championing it or advocating for it or anything. And he's been the guy for like 50 years. And it's like, man, that's like, I envy those folks. I really do. These are the people, that's why I'm kind of one of those people that's like, look, if you're going to admire someone, like, you can admire sort of the alternative people and the quirky folks, but like, have an understanding and a reverence for the great ones, really, I love Bob Dylan. I love Ric Flair for all his faults.
Yes.
I love people that became the fucking pinnacle, that were the very best. Cause it's like, well, that's who I want to kind of understand. And so it's like people like them and people who really left an indelible mark on this field. I just kind of, legacy, like Linda Godfrey right there. It's like she put Dogman on the map. Like, she literally put Dogman on the map in Wisconsin and beyond. It's like, if not for Linda, that wouldn't even be, I don't think that would be a part of the paranormal cryptozoological zeitgeist. I don't think it would even be a thing.
No, I agree 100% wholeheartedly. Those are some, wow. The deer meat one, incredible. I just, holy crap. Okay, so I've legitimately seen deer eat meat before. So horses is not that, not that far of a leap for me to believe that. That's interesting, but I could see it. The stuff on the cruise ships have always terrified me as just a matter of habit. I like the water, but for some reason, just cruise ships having a bunch of other people in that scenario, I don't know why, always just never seemed like it would jive with me. The thing with a lot of that, like you said, is sometimes it is like the most important part, because it does raise awareness to like very legitimate issues that just don't get talked about on the day to day. Because when do you hear anybody really addressing that? Like, you listen to the news once every few years, you'll see some big incident that happens and related to some international thing, or some, something will happen. We had a few years back, there was that cruise that had that massive outbreak, and it was left off the friggin' coast of California.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, you'll have some international incident where there'll be like Somalian pirates will like jump on a ship or something like that. But you don't hear how like the industry itself is very predatory, and they kind of rely on that lawlessness to just stay profitable, because otherwise, if they were forced to just adhere to like one country's regulations, say the US, or there was some international court there, they're not going to be able to stay in business for very long. They have 3 cruises, they get sued so much they'd all be underwater more than the Titanic. It would not work for anybody. The other one, the spontaneous human combustion, is not something you hear hardly ever anymore. It was when I was a kid watching Unsolved Mysteries, like you growing up, I was legitimately terrified that could just happen to me sometime.
Yeah. It's a great mystery. It's hard, like, it's awesome. creepy. It's fun.
Yeah, and I kind of miss those ones sometimes with like paranormal research. Is just like, not that it's fun, the concept of people like lighting on fire randomly is not a fun idea, but there was something about it, a certain mystique to it. I feel nowadays you kind of lose some of that. So it's cool you got to talk to the guy that built that. Like, basically made it a thing. That's incredible. And nowadays, of course, anytime somebody says it, they basically just outright dismiss it. But it's like, it's still out there. It's a weird concept, but plenty of people have had stories of weird occurrences. And yeah, nowadays we have more understanding of certain parts of it, but there's plenty of unexplained ones out there too. So
yeah,
cool that you had to have, yeah, you get some great guests. And I like your approach to that, because even with the horse meeting horse fella there, that's something that you're open minded. That's something I see that you've carried over from like George on Coast to Coast, and Art Bell even was the same way, in that you are so open minded that you can hear and listen and understand pretty much anybody. I've heard some guests on there that, truth be told, I'm not the most patient person. You've had some guests that you've had on your show that 5 minutes in, I would have already been like, I can't do this. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna name names, because there's certain ones that I was just like, what is going on with this? But you're able to have good, engaging conversations that really get into the meat of what their story is, what they believe, how they go about their methodologies, their theology in these things. How, as an interviewer, have you developed that kind of sort of a sense for, how to, navigate these interviews? 'Cause some of them I legitimately, as somebody that's only started doing this in the last, few years, really, in broadcasting, how do you develop that?
Well, practice. I mean, it sounds cliche, but practice. Like, you just do
Mhm.
a lot of interviews and you get kind of used to them. And then I mean, like, in those 5 minutes that you're sizing the guest up, I am too. So I'm kind of like, okay, what am I in for here? And I'm like, okay, there's different kinds of guests that you kind of, I never really thought much about sort of the art of the process until I
Mhm.
relaunched the show a couple years ago. But it's like, then I kind of codified it more in my mind. But it's like, you get like this certain guest that I call them short answers. They give you really short answers. So, or you get a long answer. This is like someone who's you can check your email while they're giving an answer. It's like, so, and then you get folks that they have experiences and they just want to tell you about their experiences. And then you get other guests who you know, kind of just, you can't quite pin them down, or other guests who are like really good and really well versed and they know their stuff and they kind of have a pitter patter or a patois that they have a routine, if you will. So I kind of, it just takes, now I've just gotten really used to it, where it's like, oh, okay, and I can kind of like be like, oh, okay, I could see where this is going. I need to kind of get my mind in the right mindset for how this conversation is probably going to unfold. And so, like, that's just a matter of having done a whole bunch of interviews and kind of being like, oh, this guy or gal is like this person. They're gonna, they're not gonna give me much. They're not really as chatty or whatever. And I always try. This is like from the very like sort of beginning. I don't remember when I first noticed this, but early in doing the show was that like I really try to sort of break the ice with the guest and have a laugh within like the first 5 minutes if I can. And not necessarily like that I'm fishing for it, but just sort of establish that chemistry. I mean, nowadays, especially, but the way these shows are, it used to be like call them, get them on the literal telephone. We'd talk for a little,
Mhm.
then we'd start the show and I'd hit record. And it's like, you know, nowadays it's like you get on, you can see each other, you're getting ready to hit record. And it's like, there's a little bit more, it's a little more personalized because you can see each other. And generally, if I know them or I have, something will come out, I'll try to break the ice even before we go on, before we start recording. But it's like, I try to get them to laugh a little bit. And there are some that, like, there are some guests in the long history of the show that, like, I can't particularly, I think I can think of like maybe one or two. I won't say who, but I know for sure, like, there have been more than that guests like who you can't break and who
Mhm.
won't give you that laugh. And it's like, I can kind of,
Mm.
I remember sort of like going further and further into the show and being like, I'm gonna, I don't give a fuck what you have to say about whatever topic you're on for. Like, I want that fucking laugh. I want you
You've
to,
now made a goal of it.
yeah, I want you to let your guard down. And so, and like, I think once people do that, then it's kind of off to the races. You can kind of go where the conversation goes. And it's like I've noticed this on other programs, and maybe it's just me, but I will give advice, I suppose, to anyone out there. But like, if the guest says something interesting, but it's not like in your playbook or your notes, but it interests you, then just fucking pivot to whatever that is. Like, I've heard shows where the guest will say something really remarkable and weird and interesting, and the guy and the host will just like go right to the next question they had on their list. And it's like, well, no, go back and ask them about that, like, frogman sighting they just casually mentioned,
Right.
like, offhandedly. So I kind of just throw the notes out really from the beginning, where it's like, okay, let's just start the conversation and have the notes like, okay, if it's a lull in the moment, I'm gonna like take a look and see what I have here, from the thing. And like you mentioned earlier, like, I probably spend, I mean, I don't do an intense amount of research, but I probably spend like 90 minutes to a couple hours, like, really digging into the guest's work if I can. If they've written like 4 books, it's not, you can't really. Lately, a lot of people you have on, they're paranormalists, they have podcasts or blogs.
Sure.
I can spend the time looking at their stuff, and I can put together 10 or 12 like points that I know about now because I've done the research, and I can ask them about, and I have questions about these specific things. Right. Somebody once tried to book me for a show, and they're like, "Do you want to come on the show?" Yeah, sure, I'll come on your show. Then they're like, "Well, what do you want to talk about?" And I was like, "It's your fucking show, dude." I'm like, "What do you want to talk about?" And they were like, "Well, I just guessed, the paranormal and stuff." And I'm like, "Look, dude, if you don't have any idea what you want to talk about, I'm kind of like, unless you can really tell me what you like, I'm not gonna like bring bits for you or whatever. Like, I don't know what you. Yeah, it got a little contentious actually, and it was like, oh, forget it. You got a huge ego. It's like, no, I don't have a huge ego, dude. I just don't know what the hell you want to talk about. Like, why did you ask me to be on your show if you don't know what you want to ask me about?
Yeah, that seems a little ass backwards if you ask me, because honestly, it's like, at the bare minimum, if you would reach out to them, okay, I kind of understand that. They got to get familiar with you. But if you reach out and you ask somebody, hey, come on my show, I'd like to hear about it. The bare minimum is that you should have some general direction you want this to go. That's very weird.
Really weird.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I've had a few guests that, like you said, if they've written 2 or 3 books, it's hard to read all of them. I put a legitimate effort into it, but it's just, some people have been doing this so long, it's impossible to get the body of their work. And if you're not already familiar with them, then, well, you got to kind of take what you can get. You come along with, also because of Coast to Coast AM, you come along with a huge pool of stories and references that odd occurrences that I'm sure you've come across in all your time. You had mentioned before that you every once in a while you'll send me something from Maine, and every time it's something I had not heard of. So it's great to know that that's getting out there. I'm just because this year there's been some Bigfoot stuff going on. There's been some there's always ghost activity up here, it seems. There's always stuff like that. What's some of the ones that have come across your desk in recent memory from my neck of the woods that be of interest? Because always into that.
All right. If I look brighter on the screen when I do that, I'm like flipping over to web
taking some notes.
Yeah, tab. Well, the most interesting one recently, there was a Bigfoot sighting, or I think it was like tracks that were found in snow. That the guy, so that was pretty good. But the one that really kind of blew my mind out of Maine was this, and you may have heard of this. This was last fall. The psychic who located the human remains behind a bowling alley. She had been enlisted by the family of Kimberly Moreau, who had disappeared back in 1986. So the psychic was working with the family, and they still haven't been able to find Kimberly's remains. But then the psychic was like, she called up the family. She had been waiting for them for a while, and she called the family and was like, "Hey, I just pinged on like this this wooded area behind this bowling alley. And so
Mhm.
they went and they found human remains behind the bowling alley. And they later tested it, and it turned out the remains were of a different missing person. But that's, to me, like, I write a lot about psychics, the good and the bad, and
Yeah.
you know, more often they're bad because they do these, you know, they're like these plaza psychics. Like, we got one in my town.
Mhm.
It's
Oh
like,
boy.
you know, you fall on the wrong side of one that's got no scruples, and you're out like tens of thousands of dollars. So this happens
Mhm.
all the time, and I always write about them because I feel like if anyone, this Coast to Coast audience should be as you know, made as aware about this as possible, because they're the folks who might
Yeah.
be, you know. So it's like, hey, look, if you go to a psychic and then they're like, oh, you got a lot of problems, I need a little more money, and then it just becomes a spiral, you know, and
Mhm.
it can get really bad. I think I'm going to be writing one this week about that. But
Oh yeah.
so when the psychic does do something where it's like, wow. I mean, I don't know. To me, it's like, I'm sure skeptics will just be like, oh, she got really lucky, or you know, something like that. But it's like, how could she, like, she pinged on this spot, and there were human remains there, but there wasn't the guy. And to me, that was like, we actually did 2 articles on that one, because, like, first the news kind of came out, and then the police and the psychic came out and sort of,
Mhm.
you know, talked more about it. And you know, and she you know, she pretty much, yeah, she said she first received the psychic tip 3 years ago when she heard a voice reference a bowling alley. And then earlier this month, that was October of 24, earlier this month, it happened again. And she was like, she called them up, and she's like, I'm here in bowling alley. So, like, maybe check near that bowling alley. And then there was
Yeah.
human remains there. So it's like, how does that, you know, how does that even happen? It's crazy. It really, to me, that's like that's kind of, I wouldn't necessarily call it proof, but it's proof, like, of something. I don't know. It's very weird.
Yeah, it's a little more than just a coincidence or something like that. At the same time, I think some people would be like, well, it's Maine. You stick a shovel any 12 feet, you're bound to find something. But there's like, there's an odd uncanniness to that, because I remember I saw the original article when they first found the remains
Yeah.
before the testing had come back. And then I saw the follow up through your news update on that. And I was just like, it's so uncanny. It's so odd of a thing to have happen. But at the
Yeah.
same time, like you said, there's a lot of psychics out there that are just grifters. To have one that could even pick up something vaguely unusual was pretty impressive to me. I haven't seen that happen very often. We do have, plenty of that up here, as well as, plenty of mediums and stuff like that. Some better than others. I always, as a rule of thumb, I'm always like, if they're trying to make money off of it, you're in the wrong place,
Yeah.
because nobody I know that legitimately does this and is passionate about it is looking to make money off of it.
Right.
Then people always counter that, well, if you're good something, never do it for free. And I'm like, yeah, but there's certain, ethical limitations to that when you're talking about solving like cold cases with a family.
Right.
Yeah, you're not a private investigator. What are we doing here? Like, it's unusual, but not unheard of for that to happen. And especially nowadays where, people look for stuff like that. Like you said, you have listeners. There are people out there that they prey on these sort of people. You see it full of it on TikTok. You see tons of it on
Oh yeah.
Instagram and all these other social medias. They become their own hell in the paranormal realm and of themselves. And I do my best to just ignore a lot of it, but there is some of it that I'm just like, this is not good for people.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with that. And that, for the maniacs listening, that all unfolded last October in the community of J, Maine. I'm not sure
J
where that
Man.
is. Yeah.
I'd have to look that one up. That's not one that's familiar to me, but we have some weird little towns that would have 1,000 people in them, and might have been identified by a number a decade ago, and somebody finally went around and gave them a proper address.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just learned of a bunch of new ones recently because we were trying to build up a map of different places around the state we wanted to check out. And there's there's some of them that match the toothpick capital of the world is Strong, Maine. Has a population of 1,400. It was like it's such an odd random thing, but okay, I want to see where they made all of the toothpicks for the 1800s. I guess that's a cool thing to check out, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be some weird ghosts there, whatever, because everywhere I go around this place is haunted in some way or another. So what about in your neck of the woods? You live down in Massachusetts, haunted as shit, right? Like most of New England?
What's that?
Like most of New England, I'm sure it's haunted as shit, right?
Oh yeah. There's a lot of ghost stuff here. There's a lot of ghost stuff. Well, it's got Salem, it's got Lizzie Borden, so it's kind of, it has a lot of these small towns. I mean, like, the old towns, all of New England has that kind of vibe to it. I like to go up to Exeter a lot. Exeter, New Hampshire's kind of like got that old timey vibe to it too. Yeah, I mean, there's lots. I'm not a huge ghosts guy. I think maybe just because it's so pervasive here in Massachusetts, that I never like super got into it. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of interesting ghost things. I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, what about, let's pivot back to Maine, because sure, you probably come across some UFO stuff. We just recently had a whole outbreak, a rash of sightings of UFOs over the last year. Any interesting ones that caught your attention?
Not up in Maine. No, here's what I got for you on Maine. I looked up a few of these. So, odd metal skull found on Maine Beach. This one, I don't know if you heard about this one. This was back in May of 2020. This giant, sizable metal skull was found on the beach in Kittery. So, yeah, this lady found it. She turned it over to the Kittery Police Department. There's a picture of it on the thing, on the Coast to Coast site. No one knows where it, no one knows what became of it. And as far as I knew, the Kittery. I want to say Kenny. I keep wanting to say Kenny Bunkport, but Kittery. The Kittery cops had it last at the time of my writing. So it's just a big old metallic skull that this lady found on the beach.
Yeah, look into that.
I'll send you that one. Yeah, you should call the Kittery police and find out if they.
I absolutely will.
Still have it. Yeah, that was a really cool one. Because it's like you can really see how weird it is. There was a funny story. You may have seen this one in the news a couple of years ago, right around this time in 2023 in Brunswick, Maine. This 87-year-old lady, Marjorie Perkins, was woken up by a teenager who broke into her house. And first she tried to fend him off with a chair, and they were arguing, and so they almost fought. And then he told the lady, then he got tired and wandered around into the kitchen, and he told the lady he's just really hungry. So the 87-year-old lady made him, gave him some peanut butter and honey crackers and tangerines and a couple of bottles of Ensure, it says here. I wrote this, so yeah. This is what happened. And so then as he was eating the snacks, she called 911 on a rotary phone, which is my favorite detail of the story. She was on a rotary phone. So
that's wild.
And the kid was 17. So if he saw her dialing the rotary phone, he probably had no idea what she was actually doing.
Never see one of those in his life, guaranteed. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so wild. That's such a very Maine story, though, because I know so many wily old ladies that would absolutely be ready to throw down at any moment's notice, but they want to feed people at the end of the day. That's their, that's their happy place. That's so cool. And that's one of the things. I don't know how many of my listeners, if you have not checked out Coast to Coast AM, it's a regular listen of mine. I don't get to hear it now as much as I used to, because I used to hear it every morning on the ride into work.
Yeah.
Because at the time I was working an early shift, and back pre-pandemic, I was able to have a nice early schedule, and so every morning on the ride in, it was listening to George Norrie. It was even the classic catalog is well worth diving into. There's so much cool stuff on there. Some of it's paranormal, some of it's just interesting, and that's a fun part of all of it.
Yeah, with what I do, I try to do like one or two, definitely two if I can, two like legit classic within the paranormal sort of milieu of like UFOs, Bigfoot, anything, that you'd see on Unsolved Mysteries, let's say. And then like for the third story of the day, I try to do something that's like human, like, because I think the people are like the weirdest part of like our lives in a sense. So to me, it was like that 87-year-old lady fending off the burglar with snacks is like, that's the kind of story, that I'll do sort of at the end of the day. Cause like to try to cleanse the palate a little bit. And here's something weird that, here's something weird that happened, in this town or whatever. Like today we had a kind of crossover, like this couple got married at a Bigfoot conference. So I'm like, well, that's good.
Awesome.
That's a fun thing. And then,
it's wholesome.
Wholesome. Yeah. Super wholesome. Yeah. So it's, it's kind of, I love doing like weird standalone stories that are like, what is, I can't believe, like, I think we did one a while ago, the guy, like, he stole, let's say, a limo. He drove a limo onto the tarmac at the Las Vegas airport, put on a clown mask, got out, tried to commandeer a plane to fly him to Area 51. And it was like, this is the craziest story like I've ever heard. This is amazing. And
that sounds like a movie.
Weirdness. Yeah. Like I almost fell out of my chair. Like when I see that, it makes my day. Like, it's a great feeling when on this gig when you stumble upon some story and it's like, well, I'm writing that. That's that's money in the bank. That's a for sure story. Let's just write it right now. Sometimes I'll be looking for stories a lot and sort of like put them on a thing while I'm writing and looking. Because sometimes I'll find one and I'll be like, stop looking, write this story now. You absolutely know for a fact that you're going to put this up because it's insane and zany and just wild. Like Bolivian kids let a deadly spider bite them so they can get Spider-Man powers. It's like that kind of stuff. Like, all right, well, we know for sure that's going up, so let's just do it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, realistically, think about it. It's like, I know him personally. I hear 100 ghost stories a year, minimum, probably more. Yeah. You probably hear more of that, whether it be ghost stories, UFO sightings, Bigfoot, etc. How often do you hear about, like, some one old one that I remember years ago is the lady that got stuck to a couch. Yeah, now, this is probably before you were writing there. I think one was back in 2013 or so, 2013, 2012, somewhere in there. It was a while back. But yeah, lady got stuck to a couch, literally sat there so long she became fused with it. And I was like, horrifying, first of all, but like, where the hell do you find these stories?
Yes.
I mean, I come across some weird shit and then I'll see some stuff that I'm just like, is this something out of Weekly World News that I just forgot was like, didn't know they were still printing apparently?
Yes. Well, there was one, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. There was one like that recently, also from Maine. I didn't put it in my notes for the show tonight, but it was like the Humane Society. Here it is. Hundreds of mice turned over to animal shelter by overwhelmed. Oh, that's in New Hampshire, but it's close enough. So yeah,
close is very close. Yeah.
Yeah. Some guy in New Hampshire. Yeah. They believe to have been nearly 1,000 mice. Like he had gotten mice. He started breeding them for some reason. And he just became overwhelmed. And eventually, I don't know, probably someone from his family was like, look, you need help. He probably had to have some intervention because he showed up there with these like giant like storage bins full of mice. And they were like, we don't even know what to, they were like completely overwhelmed themselves. They're like, we don't know what to do with all these mice. Like, this is crazy. Does anyone like who the fuck, first of all, who even really adopts a mouse from the Humane Society, right? Like it has to be such a small, certainly not 1,000 people in New Hampshire. It's like,
No, definitely not. And like, I think the first time that I saw a guinea pig at a like animal shelter or like a gerbil or whatever, I was like, I didn't realize they did rodents. Like,
yeah.
okay, couldn't imagine going in there and just see thousands of mice, which within a week or two are going to be another 10,000 mice because that's just
Yeah.
how that is. That's insane. But again, though, I'm actually not even surprised because that sort of stuff just happens around here all the time. Like,
Yeah.
whether it be here in New Hampshire, stuff like that. Like, I know neighbors that have ended up with just like dozens of cats because they just let them run wild, and then they're overwhelmed, and rather than do anything, they're just like, oh well, they're free range cats now. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
they're feral, is what they are. They're gonna bite somebody. Get them out of my yard. They're shitting in my garden, and
Yeah.
we've had that fight many a time. Yeah.
Then you see him. Yeah. Then you see him on the news when like they come and take away like 500 cats, and it's like, holy shit, dude! Why'd you let that?
Yeah,
get out
hey,
of
I know
control?
that guy. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it is. Well, hey, one thing we bonded over last time, and I don't know how much you've kept up on lately. You're a wrestling guy yourself.
Huge wrestling guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, AEW has been going pretty well. I know you and I both enjoy a lot of their stuff, and they've been really hot lately. They've been doing some cool things. What do you think of MJF with the Hurt Syndicate? How you liking that? It's one thing I'm very much into myself, but I know some
like it.
people are kind of like, eh.
Yeah, I guess I have mixed feelings. I kind of want to see how it plays out because I assume he eventually is going to split from them. It's a very interesting dynamic in a sense because, like, it's a different side of MJF that we haven't necessarily seen yet. It's like, I think it's kind of keeping some of the comedic elements from when he was paired up with Adam Cole. When he was a babyface, he still kind of has a little bit of like a babyface edge to him. Because he's like the dopey loser, kind of like annoyance to the Hurt Syndicate. So I kept like when they were like, "Oh, are they gonna let him in? Are they not?" Like I was sure that they were gonna like turn on him, or he was gonna be one step ahead of them and have like two heavies of his own who were gonna like be in his new gang, and they were gonna like, I was sure. And so then when they let him join, I was like, "What? Where's this going?" So I'm kind of like still on the like, "Where's this going?" Mindset, but I like it. I really do. It's very entertaining, and I do. It's very unique sort of way of using MJF. So I'm enjoying that. It's like it's kept him busy and out of the scene of like
not in the title picture for once for a little while.
And on Osprey and Swerve and that sort of upper echelon guys.
Yeah. How are you feeling about the Death Riders thing? I know that one's kind of a hit or miss for people. I've got my own theories on where that's going, but I think a lot of people are just kind of over it and have been for a little while now. How you feel?
I'm ready for it to wrap up. But they've just been so good this year. And I say this as a day one fan of AEW. I was on board on day one. I was like, thank you. Let's do this because we need a second national promotion. So as a fan, and so I would say that they were on fire up until ironically up until that pay-per-view where they brought in Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson and CM Punk had his return match. That was like the peak. That was like the peak. And I'm like, this is it. They're gonna pass WWE. They're gonna this was like 22, I think, or maybe 21, but it was like
I think it was 22.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is it. Yeah, I think it was 22. And I'm like, I feel like they really kind of squandered a lot of the momentum they had when all that happened. And then the CM Punk saga happened and everything. He just put a dark cloud over the whole promotion, even after he left. I'm not a fan of that guy at all. And it seemed like they were in this funk, like all last year. It was like they were embarrassed. And it was like CM Punk kind of like showed them up and left and went to WWE, which was like red hot at the time. And it was like, oh man, WWE's just like so red hot. And how are they so big? And I don't watch WWE, so I only follow it. Like I read about it online, so I don't really watch it because it's not my cup of tea. And and it was just like how, and their fans are like, I mean, God bless them, they were having a good time, and they're like, this is cinema. This is like they should get Emmy awards for this stuff with the bloodline and everything. And I'm like, I don't see it at all. But I didn't watch week. I will say this. I have friends, they drop out of AEW, they come back. They were sounding the same with WWE. If you don't watch all the time, you can't really understand the storylines for all this stuff. Sound like stupid if you just jump in randomly and you're like, why is he doing that? What's that guy? Why are they even? And it's like, well, if you watch week to week, you understand that this is like, and then you're rewarded for the weekly viewing by these little twists and turns that if you just jump in 1 week, you're like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. It's like, no, it makes sense if you watched like 6 weeks ago when the guy hinted that he was going to do this or whatever. So they were red hot and long. This is a long diversion, but this is the best year I think of AEW that I've ever seen. Like since January,
incredible.
Like since January, it's been, and it was like, I remember like, I was right about, for people who are real hardcore, like viewers, like it was when they jettisoned Jeff Jarrett as like a main character, like with MJF, like in February. I love Jeff Jarrett, but like, come on, no one wanted to see him feuding with MJF.
It's the same with me and Jericho. It's like, I appreciate his place in wrestling. Same as Jeff Jarrett. I have respect for him and what they've done. I was so tired of seeing him on my TV week to week. I was like, please get him away for a while. We got to have him away so we can miss him. And they never gave us that breather at all with some of these guys. And now it's given others a big time to shine. Some of the ones I'm a big fan of, Darby Allin, big one. He's been out injured. Then Clive Everest, which is like just cool. And like, hey, I mean, good for that guy. He's living his dreams everywhere he goes. And nowadays you got Hangman Page that's finally like assuming his role is what I've said since the beginning, main character of AEW. He's definitely, I've always felt he was the guy they were building up, that it was just going to be like their star at some point. He's come close. Like he's always that over, but he's had that character arc now that I think we're going to see the payoff of it this year. I think this is going to come into where he's really going to be in his own, really stand on his own 2 feet. And, you got people like Swerve, you've got Will Ospreay now doing amazing work. Kenny Omega finally back, which tell you the truth, that intro when he came back after the bout with diverticulitis, he had that new music that was from the creator of Final Fantasy's scores. I don't know if you know the video game, but fantastic video game that I've been a long time fan of. They had the composer that wrote that did his music. The vocals for the music was Jason Miller, who's an artist I followed since I was literally in high school. So I was like, oh, they brought back Kenny and they've made him just like God mode now. Like he's that guy. And it really does feel like this is the best it's ever been. They hands down have the best roster. Like there's no competition. Unreal. It's insane.
It's unreal. And like you asked about the Death Riders, like, yes, I'm ready for it to end. I still, here it is, June 30th. I have to do it this week. I have a hotel room booked for Texas that I could cancel up until like the 2nd of July or whatever, or like next week or the end of this week. And I just kept running the numbers, and it was like between the flight, the hotel, the event, the food, the shenanigans, and going by myself down to Texas, it's like, this doesn't really work. I gotta get a lot more bang for my buck. Like, I could take like a 5-day vacation to like Seattle or whatever for the money that this would cost me to fly down to Dallas. But I was so, and and Christian, I still have the room for another like week. And every time I go to get smokes or some beer, I get a scratch ticket, and I'm like, hey, all I need is like $1,000 of found money, and I'll fucking go.
Just give you the sign. Just give you the sign. Right. Give you the green light. That's all you need.
I'm not even looking for $1 million. I'm just like, let me just get $1,000 on a $5 scratcher, and then I can just why not? What the hell? But so that's I cut that because if it was closer, I think I would. But it's like it's just too much to manage. I got a lot of other things I would like to do with my money. So, but the point being is, I'm so excited about this show. It is.
It's going to be a good one.
It's going to be a
All-timer.
generational show. I think it's going to be one of the all-time best. And that February show they did, Revolution, was probably the best show I've ever seen. And it was unreal. It was absolutely top to bottom. Like you were mentioning, guys like this. So the roster is so deep. Takeshita, Kyle Fletcher are both like they're world champion materials. They're absolutely unreal. Fucking Beast Mordos, my guilty pleasure. Beast Mordos is you can hang with all these guys. He's amazing.
Yeah, and some of them are ones that even like a year ago, I didn't. Kyle Fletcher being one of them, I knew who he was, didn't care for.
Yeah,
just wasn't my cup of tea. I was like, he was like Ricky Starks. I was like, he's just not my style of wrestler. I didn't really see the appeal. I think I saw him. It might have been him versus Zack Sabre Jr. if I remember. He had a weird match that he did over in Japan.
Yeah,
it was just a one-off match, and I was just like, oh, he's actually a lot better than I gave him credit for. And then his most recent run coming back to AEW, and this like the last probably 7 to 8 months or so, just been firing on all cylinders, just having good matches, and a lot of them have been that way. Takeshita was, of course, one that like I knew he was going to be like one of those guys that was always going to be a top star.
Yeah.
If they treated him like it, and they're finally there with him where he's like always a relevant threat now.
Yes.
Orange Cassidy was doing cool stuff this year, who's another one that I liked him, but I was like, he's never going to be a serious guy. They made me believe in him for a minute against Jon Moxley.
Yeah.
Then I thought about it, and I was like, and then I thought about it for a minute longer, and I was like, no, Moxley's going to murder him, is what's going to happen. Which has kind of been an unfortunate thing, is every time, I'm memeing on it on, anytime I talk about wrestling, I'm always memeing on whoever Moxley's going to be up against. He's just going to try and murder them at one point or another.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been their whole thing, right? For a while, he was, plastic bagging people. And now he's just, kind of went to a little softer on it, just the normal beat downs. Not as imposing of a threat as it was. I felt it was a little better early on the run where they were really just taking people out and giving them time off for 3 months, I was liking that part of the story. I kind of wish they had dwelled in that part of it, but I get how they needed to progress more because that was an issue they've had. Undisputed Kingdom being one of those ones that started out, they had a cool idea when they had that big Adam Cole turn, went nowhere 3 months later. They've had a little misfire there. Took them a little while to heat up Mercedes. And she's now the best in the world when it comes to, and people I hear constantly blaming her as if she's the booker for 5 other companies that all decided she was worthy of putting their belts on. I'm like, come on, people, let's be real. It's one of those things.
It's. I still haven't got to the answer because I am ready for the Death Riders to end. I'm a little concerned. Like, I just hope they have an idea of where they want to go next. Because, everything seems so wayward and confused for the last few years. And then it was like, they've shown, Tony Khan and company have shown such incredible discipline with this Death Rider story. They started it in October or so last year. And people were crying for it to end in December. At the start of the year, they were like, I think it was Swerve got a title shot like earlier this year, right? Yeah, and the Young Bucks cost him the belt. And it was like, this is it. Swerve has to beat him. Like, he made it through Swerve. It was like they just kept dragging it on and on and on until it got really compelling. And it's like, okay, and it is, I'll give the devil their due. It is like the Roman Reigns story, but it's a much more condensed. I don't know how anyone could stand a 3-year-long world title reign where the rug kept getting pulled out from the fans over and over and over again. So I think that they're going to pay it off in Dallas. I mean, I give a 10% chance they still have Moxley win so Darby can be the one to take the belt. But I think I think they have to. I think Darby's going to come in and help to offset the Death Riders, but I think you gotta pull the trigger on Adam Page at this point.
That's kind of my thing. Is I'm like I thought the same thing. I was like I was very much in the camp that I was like it's gonna be Darby. They're gonna beat him almost to death. He's gonna go away for a while. He's gonna come back. Then he's gonna win the belt.
I mean, I always thought that was what was going to happen, but then I think this organically became such a movement that it's like, and Hangman's so over that you can have Darby feud with Mox without the belt involved, and then you can still have Darby's chase for the belt down the line. I mean, you don't have to because there's really no payoff if he just shows up in a couple weeks to come after Mox cheats. This is the biggest show of the year. You gotta do it. I mean, this is it. And I
give everybody that moment. It's worth it.
When he pulls the belt out of the briefcase and the place is gonna go bananas. And
it's a cowboy in Texas. We don't need more reasons than that.
Exactly.
Come on.
Exactly. And I gotta put over probably like with Eddie Kingston out, my favorite. I have a lot of favorites in AEW, like tons of them. But when I stop to make sure I watch is Timeless Toni Storm. She is amazing. Wow. Yes. She is just artistry. Like she's just fantastic. And she's, just such a compelling character, and her interviews they're unbelievable. Like she just
everything.
She's the total package. That's why I'm really looking forward to that match too, because it's like she's the best character in the women's division, probably the best character all around in AEW, if not all wrestling. She is like in the upper echelon of like she's
I'd say
cooking right now. She is and she has been for like the last like year and a half or so. And then you got more. It's like the old WrestleMania. It's the immovable object versus the unstoppable force. It's like Mercedes Moné, Toni Storm. This is the match that we wanted to see. Since Mercedes showed up in AEW a year ago, and ever since she's collected all these belts, Tony's really refined the character. I mean, that Mariah May storyline was
cinema. That was cinema. They really paid off all of that so well.
Yeah, I'm really bummed Mariah May left. I'm trying to follow her down in NXT, but it's like she changed her name.
NXT's better. NXT's better than the main roster stuff. I'll say that much. If there's anything that's like worthwhile to somebody that enjoys just ring work, and that like element of it is stronger in NXT, but she hasn't had a chance to do that yet because it's basically been just kind of one-off segments here or there.
Yeah, I guess what bothers me is she changed her name, which is like, I get that. But to me, it's like, I'm going to get like super wrestling nerd here, but it's like, to me, that says something because it's like, okay, Penta, you can bring in, Phoenix, you can bring in, and they keep their names.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a combination of them kind of like trying to control her from the word go because she's a huge WWE fan, grew up a WWE fan. She's derisively, you would call her a mark, right? So she's like, she's a mark for Triple H and WWE, and she's just she's blinded by sort of her fandom, and so she changed her name. Like, why the fuck would you change your name? You are established as Mariah May. It's like, why? It kind of broke my heart a little bit. It really did, because it's like I'm a Mariah May fan. I'm not a fan of this Blake Monroe character. It's like and to me, it was like I feel like it was partially done to kind of diminish AEW because like if they brought her in the way they should have, which was she should have come rolling out in the middle of Monday Night Raw against and called out the world champion. She should have had a Chris Jericho like a rival in WWE, and instead
would have been a good opportunity.
Yeah, they just brought her in on the minor league show and changed her name, and she's probably going to hang around there for like a year. And it's like, I think part of it's like, well, we don't want to give AEW, we don't want to put them on our level. So we're not only are we not going to like make a big deal about her coming here, we're also going to change her name and like erase her past. And it's like, it's like, you bought Mariah May. Like, that's who you bought. Like, what are you doing? So it's frustrating.
I'm very much on the same page with that, and that's been an ongoing thing with WWE over the years, and they seem to be so selective about it. Every time I think they're making progress in a different direction, like when they brought Penta in is a good example. When I saw that Penta was coming in as Penta with his old production, like the way he does things, that he's done it since, I mean, Christ, since back in the Lucha Underground days.
Yeah.
And then like looking at him coming in, I was like, oh, so they can just let wrestlers just be themselves, like their gimmick.
Yeah.
And
it's
then
like,
why not?
Why does Ethan Page get to keep his name, but like Ricky Starks has to be Ricky Saints? It's like, okay, it's to me that tells me how they value the people that they sign, where it's like, okay, you're going to use, we're going to give you a whole new identity because we're going to start you from scratch. And it's like, Mariah May doesn't need to start from scratch. Mariah May is one of the best wrestlers, in all women's wrestling, and a fantastic sort of sports entertainer, which, I mean, I was really surprised she even ended up in AEW, because I always thought that she was tailor-made for WWE. So it's like, when she left, I was like, God bless her, because that's where she belongs. She did her job. She did a fantastic job in AEW, and I have and I still wish her the best. Like, she gives a fuck what Binnall thinks, but but I still hope that things turn out well for her. But it's like, geez, talk about like someone losing their aura like in a few weeks. It's
very weird because she very much did end her AEW run on such a high there, because it was just after the big payoff of the match and the whole year build up to the match with Toni Storm, her title run, and then going through that. It was such a like perfect like start, middle, and end to her story and her run in AEW and how it developed.
Yeah.
I don't think they're ever going to really capture that again in just any normal sense in any other place. They might try it, but they're never going to really replicate that in the same way. And it was such a unique story to go into, to like, take the whole, classic movie roles and then reverse it and then play off of the tropes and everything. It was just so neat. And everybody I know was so invested into that. And it's one of those things that made it such a unique part of the experience of watching AEW over the last year while it developed. Now, all just squandered away. We're probably not going to see her do much of anything. Unfortunately, I just don't know where they're going with some of the stuff. Like, they've strapped some of them up. Ricky Saints had a belt for a while. Like, they are like trying to make them a big thing. Ethan Page has been fantastic since he came back to NXT. Like, it's so weird because I did not like him at all in AEW, but he feels so natural in NXT. I'm like,
he's another guy that I was like, he was another guy when I saw him in AEW, I was like, oh, this guy belongs to WWE. He's not cut out for this. Like, about the only, like, MJF is a lot like that, but he can bring it in the ring. But like, MJF's another guy where I'm like, this guy should be in WWE, really. He's kind of made for that sort of style of like, So, I mean, I'm glad he stayed with AEW after all these years, but it's like, I have a feeling he'll make the jump eventually because the temptation will be too great. And, who knows? But it's like, And I think they're going to really get behind Blake Monroe Blake, the new Mariah May. I think they're really going to get behind her. I think she's going to be a big star, I think. But I mean, they had Toni Storm and they completely fucked her up. And then Toni Storm came up with the timeless thing, on her own in AEW. So it's like, you never know how it's going to go with some of these folks. So it's
true. It's true.
Yeah, and that women's division is pretty serious in WWE. So it's
they have some of my favorites are right over there right now. Stephanie Vaquer being a big one from CMLL. She was fantastic there. They just picked up Jordan Grace. Julia is another freaking fantastic one. I mean, honestly, she hasn't gotten to really showcase enough yet. I think that's going to take a little while for people to really. She's over. Like, people are liking her, but I think it's still she's finding her footing in a real place there. She just won a belt over the weekend, as a matter of fact, U.S. Championship.
I heard about that. Yeah. She's I guess she had a real killer match with Jordan Grace on NXT. Like, they said that was like, this was the first time you could really see what all the fuss was about. And so it's like, they need, you just got to put two of the best together and kind of give them some time in it. And they usually get something pretty good. But like, I mean, I don't watch, with WWE, it's just, from top to bottom, I just find the whole presentation distasteful.
Well, when you get, 5 matches out of a 3-hour show, it's real hard to, justify that amount of time investment, especially when you have other products now that are, doing more with that time,
The downtime between the matches and the commentary is just so awful. Like, I don't mind Michael Cole after all these years, but Pat McAfee is just so bad, dude. Everybody they have besides Michael Cole is like awful. And Michael Cole's pretty bad himself, but he's sort of like he's bad. He's been bad for so long, you kind of can just deal with his badness. So it's just like, yeah, that's Michael Cole. He kind of, he's just been around forever, so it's cool. But like these other,
he's an old hand.
Yeah. And the other announcers are just like so obnoxious, and it's just so loud, and just like I don't know. It doesn't feel natural.
Nope, it doesn't. And that's one thing that I definitely noticed. There are a couple that they've started to get there, but they're still a long ways off. And I think that's one thing that it does add to the experience. We've honestly been lucky because it has been nice to have another company and something that's leveling the playing field to make everything better, because it forces them to raise the quality of their product, right? I mean, regardless, AEW being present, they can ignore it, pretend like they're not a threat, pretend like they're not a big deal. But every time that they mention it on TV, they're further validating that it is something that's on their radar. So honestly, at this point, I'm just glad. I just want more spooky wrestling, because that's my one gripe with wrestling right now. I'm always one for the spooky gimmicks. Like I was so excited when the Wyatt Six came back in WWE. I was so into House of Black and AEW. I'm all about that stuff. And now Malachi went back to WWE. Brody and Julia Hart are still holding it down, but I'm like, it's not so the same.
Yeah.
I think Brody's still my favorite, man. He's a great dude. I love seeing him on my TV whenever he shows up, but it's just, it doesn't have that same appeal that it does when the lights go out and oh shit.
Yeah. I can't really, I thought I heard somewhere that like Tony Khan doesn't like sort of like the supernatural style of stuff. So it's like, I think that was the impression I got, and comedy too, which is kind of like why Danhausen never really went anywhere in AEW. It's like he kind of didn't know what to do with him or anything. So it was like, and I can kind of see that, because they really don't, besides the House of Black, they really never had like any sort of like dark sort of supernaturally type stuff.
Not really. And I think that the House of Black was kind of an anomaly based off of the fact that, it was Malachi Black or Alistair, now.
Yeah.
I think that was probably the biggest driving force behind that in his
book. I'm sure. Yeah.
But hey, I mean, either way, it's been good to get to see more of that. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I know I have been. Well, this last 20 minutes of the podcast, I'm sure some people have probably already tuned out of, but the ones that didn't, hey, guess what? We have wrestling once in a while too. So this is always fun.
There you go.
I keep the show free and clear. We did talk about all the bases, and hey man, I really, really appreciate you coming on tonight. It has been fantastic getting to catch up with you, getting to chat for a little while. What do you got going on that you'd like to plug before we call it a night?
Pretty much just Binnall of America. People can find that Binnall of America. You can find that. Just punch it into Google. Pretty much, just punch in Binnall, Paranormal, any of that. You can go to binnallofamerica.com. The website is it's gone pretty much for now, because I need someone to help me get it reset up. So now it just kicks over to us on Spotify. We're also on YouTube. So if you're a YouTuber, like I said, I don't really promote the show ever, which it's funny. People go to the Binnall of America YouTube and they're like, oh, you only have like this many followers and you only have this many listeners. And it's like, I'm a podcast, dude. I've been doing this for 20 years. My listeners aren't going to start going to YouTube to listen to the show. It's like, these are just anyone new who might want to jump in now, but it's like, the audience is all people who are downloading it, as it's always been. So, it's just funny. So we look a little feeble on YouTube. So if you're a YouTuber, go over and follow us and spread the word on Binnall America on YouTube. I'm thinking about sort of doing something YouTube exclusive down the line, but it's just it's just a lot going on and everything. So that's Binnall of America. And we come out every Wednesday with a new show. So we have everything taped through mid-August, essentially. So I got like the next 6 weeks already in the can, and I'm setting up new interviews as we speak. And then for Coast to Coast, you can go to coastam.com, and then navigate up to where the articles is, or just click on one of the articles in the carousel on the front page. That'll take you into where my stuff is, and all my stuff has bylines. It's all under the articles section, but I put out a baker's dozen articles every week, and I think that the stuff's really gotten refined, like in the last couple of years. I kind of was just like, well, a long time for originally I was sort of like, oh shucks, but now I'm like, yeah, man, I think we're probably the best paranormal news site out there. I work really hard, and I look really far and wide, and it kind of sometimes it drives me a little nuts, because the stuff I'll put out on Monday afternoon, when I'm looking for stories on Thursday morning, it's like the biggest story on all these websites. And it's like, man, we already did that Monday. We need like the new shit. And it's like, I'm the one coming up with the new shit all the time. Especially from like all over the world, weird places and far-flung countries and stuff like that. Strange creatures that, are part of the local legend and lore that otherwise, might get past us. Like I'm like searching for crazy type named cryptids that are only in Uruguay or whatever. Like I happen to know that I have this list, so I'm just like googling and finding stuff and going through Reddit and all the Facebook groups and just constantly searching for stuff. And so I mean, if people want to really be on the cutting edge of what's going on in the world of the paranormal, and especially like I kind of consider it like a beat. So it's like, if you want to know the latest on what's going on with like Amelia Earhart, if anything happens with Amelia Earhart, DB Cooper, spontaneous human combustion, Bermuda Triangle, like you will hear about it first, almost certainly on Coast to Coast. Maybe it'll come from some local newspaper somewhere that'll have something that's like no one else is going to pick up this story, no national outlet. Like I'll be like, oh wait, what's this thing about Amelia Earhart that happened here or whatever, here in this newspaper from like across the world. Let me write this up for the site. So it's like, if you want to stay on the cutting edge and really know what's going on with all this stuff, generally, I try to, every day I'm looking for all the different topics to see what's happening in all these different worlds. So yeah, check it out. coastam.com. And yeah, Binnall of America is the show. And so, and I'm on Twitter and I'm on Facebook only. So I should get on.
You're on Blue Sky still?
Oh, I am on Blue Sky, but I barely use it. So
yeah, I know that one's been kind of hard. I hate the character limit on there. It's just, it's a gripe of mine. I like my text and I can't freely convert things from one app to another. And that's the only one that won't allow me to do it.
Yeah.
Because it has a different character limit as everybody else.
I admire the spirit of Blue Sky, but in a sense where it's like you got to know your enemy kind of thing. It's like Twitter still is where it's at if you fucking want to like be able to easily get the news when shit happens, and kind of just to know who some of the bad apples are out there. That's it's like Blue Sky's a little bit of a bubble of love and light, and I admire that, but at the same time it's like, all right, if you only hung around on Blue Sky, you wouldn't realize just how shitty how shitty things are and how shitty people are nowadays. It's like it never ceases to amaze me when I'm on Twitter, where I'm like, I want to be like, hey guy, and sort of just cut someone down, and then I'll like click on their thing and it's like some dude, and this isn't necessarily a judgment call, but it's like some dude with like 38 followers from like Manchester, England, and he's like 23. It's like if I like on the wrestling type shit too, especially where it's I come as I've gotten older and been on the internet for a longer time, I've sort of come to the realization that like there's no point in fighting with people, almost unless you know them, and you shouldn't do that anyway. But like you shouldn't fight with strangers on the internet, because, like, look, folks, I'm 46 years old. Chances are, like, why would I want to waste my time arguing with like some 17-year-old fucking kid in Essex, England about, why AEW sucks or anything like that. It's like there's better things to do in this world,
Absolutely.
than do that.
Yeah. There's not enough time in the day to keep engaging in that stuff. And I think a lot of us spent a lot of time before we got to that moment of realization of like, oh, why am I doing this again? And now, I mean, that's why I post. I don't reply to a ton of stuff on most of my social medias. The people that know me, like you reach out to me and it's like, I interact with you because I know you're good shit.
Yeah.
I don't usually just jerk around with random Joe Schmo that freaking sends me a DM, because 9 times out of 10 it's either going to be spam or it's going to be something I don't want to fucking engage with. So I'm like, yeah, in the bin it goes. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Social media it's a scary place, but honestly, your work and what you do is a bright spot on the internet for me, as well as a lot of other people, I'm sure. It's been fantastic getting to meet you and getting to talk to you tonight. Has been a great time. I very much appreciate you coming on, man.
Oh, thank you, brother. It was my great pleasure. I had an absolute blast, and I hope folks didn't mind all the hardcore wrestling talk. But I think there'll be some folks who were like, "That was fucking awesome." So for those folks, I hope they dug it, and it was a lot of fun. And we're not that far apart, and there's all kinds of events in New England. So I have a feeling our paths will cross, if not this year, definitely in the not too distant future. So, and I look forward to that.
Yeah, from what I hear, there's I don't know if you're going to make it up to the Paranormal Con going on in September up here in Portland, or in Augusta. That one's going to be a pretty big one. I know a lot of people around New England are going to that. The International Cryptozoology Museum, they're going to have their like reopening event when they move coming up. I was just talking to Chris Packard there the other day about that. That sounds like that's going to be a big shindig that should attract a whole bunch of paranormal people to the neighborhood.
I will definitely be there for that. I will definitely be in Bangor for the grand reopening. So
hell yeah, I think that's going to be a good time. I will probably see you there. Well, right on, man. I very much appreciate it. And hey, listeners, I will be linking in the description a couple of things, Coast to Coast AM, of course, because that's a regular listen, and I think you all should get to know it. And I will definitely be linking the Binnall of America. Fantastic podcast with an excellent host. I think you all will enjoy it. If you haven't heard it already, check it out. As always, folks, I've been the Reverend Redbeard. It's so good to be with you. I'm so glad to have had Tim on the show this week. I really, really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, let us know. I'd love to hear from you. We will be back shortly. Talk to you all soon. Keep those lands lit. Stay safe out there.